The Utah Hockey Club is about to get some much-deserved rest. The NHL is taking 2 weeks off for the Four Nations face-off. But first, they had one last game, a chance to get 2 points on the road against the best team in the NHL, Alex Ovechkin and the Washington Capitals. A fast start is what they needed, and that's exactly what they got. Josh Doan, the rookie, takes a shot from distance. Wow. Gives Utah the early lead, 1-0. 30 seconds later, Dylan Guenther finds Michael Carcone in front of the net, and Utah's up 2-0 less than 2 minutes into the game. After Washington got one back, Jack McBain and Michael Kesselring on the break. McBain finishes for the third goal of the period. We're not even 8 minutes into the game. Now Washington on the power play. The one-timer is blocked by Ingram, but Pierre-Luc Dubois puts the back to rebound. 3-2 Utah at the first break, but bad news, Utah would be without Connor Ingram after the first. He took a wicked slap shot from Alex Ovechkin in the first period. He would miss the rest of the game. So we go to the second period, a little quieter than the first. Utah on the power play. Clayton Keller with a great pass to Guenther for the one-timer. He goes top shelf. He continues his stretch of points. Utah has built a 4-2 lead on the top team in the East. Holding on to leads like this has been a problem, though, and Coach Andre Tourigny explains the reason.
If you want to win against that quality of opponent, you need to be really detailed on little fundamentals, face-offs, and different stuff like that. So that is where we need to learn.
Okay, so here we go again. A 4-2 lead heading into the third period. Would they pay attention to those details? Well, only 5 wins now for Utah Hockey Club when leading or tied heading into the third. And unfortunately, the third period woes would continue. Ovechkin is going to send one into Dylan Strome in front of the net. He lights the lamp to cut the lead to 1. Same score, 90 seconds left in the game. Capitals with an empty net. Ovechkin fires one, and Tom Wilson, seemed to be by accident, redirects it past Vejmelka. We have a tie game, and yes, we are going to overtime again. Dylan Guenther, already 2 game winners this week. He's going to send this one to Clayton Keller, and he nearly ends the game despite giving up the 2 third-period goals. Karel Vejmelka, 3 saves in overtime, including this kick save with 10 seconds to go. No overtime winner, so we're going to go to a shootout. Nick Smaltz up first. Fancy stick work puts Utah up 1-0. Clayton Keller with a chance to win it, but he's going to send it over the rail. All right, Veg can win it with a stop. Can he do it? The wall denies Dylan Strome. 3 big stops in the shootout by Veggie. Utah survives that third period collapse. They're going to get 2 points on the road against one of the best in the NHL. That's the first shootout win in franchise history. Now 6 points behind Vancouver for that second wild card spot.
You're perfectly right, but he was assertive. He never felt he was shaky or whatever. He was assertive. He wanted to play. He was confident, so good for him.
For sure. I mean, they're a great team. They're top of the standings. I thought we took it to them for a while there, and we knew they were going to have a pushback, but we stuck with it. Veg did made some great saves for us, and 2 points against one of the top teams in the league will take it.
Here's your updated look at the Western Conference standings. A huge win that allows Utah just to keep pace in that race for that final wild card spot. It's unlikely they could get any higher. 6 points back of Vancouver, who has won 3 straight. It's not easy to make up that ground. Utah will be back on the ice February 22nd against the Kings in L.A.
All right, how about some NBA on Super Bowl Sunday? Sixers and Bucks. Hubie Brown honored in the pregame. It was his final broadcast for the legendary broadcaster and coach. New addition Kyle Kuzma drives and gets the turnaround jumper for the Bucks. Damian Lillard drives to the rim for the layup and the foul. He had a big game in the third quarter. Lillard pulls up for the step-back 3. He's dialed in. He's getting ready for that 3-point contest, right? Bobby Portis finds Lillard for another 3. Then in the fourth quarter, Kuzma misses the shot, but look who's there. Lillard getting the rebound, scooping and scoring. Kuzma finished with 13 points, 8 boards, 5 assists. Dame with 43 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists. The Bucks win 135-127.
This schedule, I think, sets up really nicely for Utah to build and maintain some momentum.
It's a difficult slate. The Big 12 did no favors for BYU.
Utah, you need to find wins that will help ignite some excitement again.
You could have lined that up anywhere and went, oh yeah, I'm signing up for that.
The Big 12 released the 2025 schedules. Now BYU and Utah fans can make plans for what should be a wild season of football this fall. Joining us to take a deeper dive into the schedule is our BYU sports insider, Mitch Harper, and Utah sports insider, Steve Bartle. You can read, watch, and listen to all of their outstanding work and coverage on KSLSports.com. All right, guys, we have to start with the obvious, right? I mean, everyone's looking at the schedules like, when's the BYU-Utah game? We now know when it is.
Right.
But it's not a time that we all expected. What do you think about playing in mid-October?
I think that it was surprising to see that date, October 18th, because I think a lot of coaches, Kalani Sitake felt it was going to be probably the end of the season, like many of us did. But I'm okay with it because history's shown that, this game hasn't been played at the end of the year in the last 15 years. But the problem is that the Big 12 is not owning a weekend for this historic great game. This is your best game. Own a certain weekend and plant the flag that this is the weekend when BYU and Utah will be played annually. That, to me, is the issue because it's getting tossed around like it's just a meaningless game.
You see it the same way?
Yeah, a little bit. I think I see why there's value in placing it somewhere not in rivalry week, right? Because what comes after rivalry week? Championship week. And with Utah hoping to get back to championship contending status, BYU being perceived and going to be one of the top contenders in the Big 12 this year, knowing the toll that game takes on these guys, on these players, on this team, or on these teams, I think I appreciate why they wouldn't want to have that game that final weekend of the regular season. It is definitely a shock to the system not to have it because we're so used to that game, especially in conference play, being the final game of the year. But I think I see the value in not having it there.
I think there's little doubt that is the premier rivalry in the conference, especially after what they did last year, right? All right, let's take a little broader look at the schedule. Steve, we'll start with you. Just your overall thoughts when you see Utah's schedule.
Yeah, pretty fair schedule. I think with where the buys have come in week 6 and week 11, I think it sets up really nicely for Utah. The month of October, they're not going to have to leave the state. They do have to travel 50 miles south, so a tough road game, we know, going down to Provo. But outside of that, this schedule, I think, sets up really nicely for Utah to first build some momentum early on in the season, hopefully contend having that momentum in the month of October during their toughest stretch, and then finishing the year with 3 games. I think it sets up really nicely for them to build and maintain some momentum.
What stood out to you, Mitch?
Coming into the schedule release, I looked at BYU as the favorite in the Big 12 conference going into next year. Now I would say maybe I'm lowering the expectations because I think the Big 12 stacked up a difficult slate for BYU logistics-wise. Opponents, we know this league can, be a perceived bottom feeder, and they can rise to the top. The issue is that some of the logistics of this schedule are built in no matter what the strength of the opponents are. When you look at you have a bye in week 3, that's way too early. It's the earliest bye week since 2013 for BYU. And a little bit of that is due to Tom Homo keeping the East Carolina game. That was self-inflicted by BYU to keep East Carolina on the non-conference schedule. 2 Eastern time zone games, no byes the following week. The Utah game, no bye before, no bye after, and the week after, to Steve's point earlier about how draining that game can be, you go at Iowa State, is going to be probably a preseason top 14, won 11 games last year. So I think some of the logistics are very difficult with this schedule. You've got 6 straight weeks where you only have two home games. It's a difficult slate. The Big 12 did no favors for BYU.
This schedule, I think, sets up really nicely for Utah to build and maintain some momentum.
It's a difficult slate. The Big 12 did no favors for BYU.
For Utah, you need to find wins that will help ignite some excitement again.
You could have lined that up anywhere and went, oh yeah, I'm signing up for that.
Continue looking at some of the challenges, Steve. What's the toughest road game for Utah? Or maybe what's the most important game for Utah on the schedule that you point to, say, that is a game that can make or break their season if they win that game?
Yeah, I think the most important game for Utah is the conference opener against Texas Tech, because that kind of sets the tone for them the rest of the year. There are going to be much more difficult games. Texas Tech is going to be pretty formidable this season, I believe, with what Joey McGuire has done there with the Red Raiders. I think if Utah can get that win to kind of build that early momentum in conference play, that'll help them moving forward into that next phase of the schedule that I was talking about in October. So I think, for Utah, you need to kind of find wins that will help kind of ignite some excitement again, right? That's what this fan base needs for Utah. They need that excitement, and I think getting a win over the Red Raiders would do that. I think that's the most important game for Utah on that schedule.
Mitch, you dug into some of the challenges of BYU's schedule, but what is that one road game, that one road test, or maybe that crucial game in the season that could really help make or break their season?
Week 5 at Colorado is going to be a big one too. It's a Big 12 opener for BYU, and I really would have liked to have seen that game be Week 3. Colorado had an opening there too. Colorado ends up getting Houston on the road. They host BYU in Week 5. It's going to be a bit of a revenge game for the Buffs because, BYU dominated Colorado 36-14 in that Alamo Bowl game. And I think that's just going to be a great opportunity for BYU. There's going to probably be a lot of eyeballs on that game. And from a national narrative perspective, we saw the impact of playing the Buffs, what it did for BYU at season's end. I think that can be a similar impact because I think Colorado will probably be at worst 2-2, 3-1. They're going to be a huge draw. That could help BYU from a narrative perspective as they navigate what will be a tough Big 12 road.
You don't get to play every team on the schedule. If there's a team in the Big 12 that's not on Utah's schedule that you wish you could see the Utes play this year, what team would that be?
Arizona.
Yeah,
Arizona. I think it's been so long since Utah and Arizona hasn't been on Utah's schedule. It's kind of weird to not see them on it. And then, too, with what Arizona did to Utah at Rice-Eccles Stadium this past season with Noah Fafita, pulling off the late game heroics to get that win, I think Utah would have been a little extra motivated to go down to Tucson and get a win down there against the Wildcats. That's the game I wish they could have had on the schedule this year.
How about you, Mitch?
Arizona State, staying in Arizona. I mean,
that had a rivalry feel last year.
It really did. Leaving that stadium and seeing all the crowd on the field and kind of mixing it up with BYU players and administrators, like it had an intensity that's like, this is awesome because BYU has been this. Like everyone respects them and likes them, and BYU still wants to maintain that. But that had a little bit of a intensity and a nastiness that you want to see emerge from being in a conference. There's value to that, and I hope that the Big 12 moving forward looks at opportunities to maybe flex out a game and understands, okay, they're not on the schedule matrix, but that game was so good, we got to have that next year and add that to the slate. I think that would be something that Yormark has to be thinking of, and Scott Draper, the football director in the Big 12. Because I just think there'd be a lot of value there and there'd be a lot of eyeballs too. This league has to get creative with finding eyeballs because I think a lot of fans look at these schedules, both BYU and Utah, and you go, why that there? I think that's what a lot of fans are asking right now. And BYU and Arizona State, you could have lined that up anywhere and went, oh yeah, I'm signing up for that.
A flex game at the end of the year is a great idea.
Yeah. Is it way too early to have a way too early prediction on your win-losses already? Do you guys look at that already?
I've got BYU going 10-2.
Okay.
I think BYU could be 10-2 with this schedule, and this is the best BYU team that Kalani's assembled.
Wow.
The talent, the depth, a lot of it's going to hinge on Jake Retzlaff, though. Can Jake Retzlaff become what Zach Wilson was in 2020, where you're talking 30-plus touchdowns, single-digit interceptions? You've got to take care of the football. I think a lot of it hinges on him, and if he takes another leap forward, BYU is going to be in the conversation in November again, and maybe they just need a few tiebreakers to go their way this time, but they'll be in the mix. They got to stay healthy too. That's going to be critical, but they've got depth too to navigate injuries as well. But Retzlaff is key, and he's got to stay healthy because there's questions about the depth at quarterback.
Yeah, there's a lot for Utah to sort out on the offense side of the ball, but they return a good portion of their defense. A lot of guys had to step up this past season due to the injuries. I think that's going to be the focal point of Utah's outlook next year. How much can Devin Dampier come in and just kind of pick up where he left off this past season? That's pretty optimistic. That's everything clicking and that sort of stuff. But they don't have the scheduled losses like they did this past year with Arizona and TCU coming off bye weeks going into those games. Colorado is the only team that does that. I think I've settled on 8-4, 9-3 for Utah as the most likely best outcome. But there is a chance that if everything clicks, the offense is humming, 10-2 is certainly in the equation as well. But also, they could end up 7-5, 6-6, just the same.
We've seen BYU go from 5-7 to
Right.
10-2. So anything is possible in the Big 12. That's why it's so much fun. If Devin Dampier has 19 rushing touchdowns and can get up to 20 passing touchdowns, then Utah looks completely different.
Yeah.
So many things could happen. But now we know the schedule. It's going to be fun. Guys, thanks so much. Steve Bartle, Mitch Harper. You know who these guys are. Read them on KSLSports.com. Thanks, guys. When we come back, the high school sports community rallies to help one of our friends and colleagues. It's next. If you're a fan of high school athletics in our state, then you're probably very familiar with Dusty Litster.
Yeah, the face and the voice of high school sports for many years in our state. Now, Dusty and his family, they could use all of our support. Lately, you probably haven't heard Dusty on the mic calling games or breaking down the matchups. That's because he's been battling with a brain tumor. On Friday night, Lehi and Skyridge, they came together to honor and support Dusty with a Dusty Litster night. And you can also support him and his family as well. You see the GoFundMe information there on your screen. Go ahead and check out that page. You can find out more about it at KSLSports.com as well. But that's one great way you can help out his family and Dusty throughout this fight. It certainly is a difficult time for them, but we're there with you, Dusty.
Yeah, Dusty, if you're watching, we're with you the whole way. We've been thinking about you and hope to see you on the sidelines soon. You can go learn more about that and learn about the Utes, Cougars, Aggies, and everybody else at the KSL Sports.